Today we will be learning about acquired immunity. Now with acquired immunity, it basically breaks off into two separate groups, one as active immunity and the second as passive. Now with active, as you can see, the responsibility is to get the antibodies from the immune system in response to a microorganism being present. There are two different types of active immunity. There are natural active, artificially active. Natural immunity is acquired when the patient is exposed to a pathogen, then the body recognizes the pathogen for future reoccurrence. An example of this would be like the influenza virus. Next is the artificially active. And it is acquired through a vaccine that is used to build immunity from the presence of the pathogen. An example of that would be the shot for influenza. Now, with passive immunity, their responsibility is to get the antibodies from another patient. There are two different types of passive immunities, natural passive and artificially passive. Natural passive immunity only occurs through pregnancy because antibodies are transferred from mother to child. An example of this would be breastfeeding because she's transferring microorganisms and everything from her into the child. With artificial passive immunity, it is short-term and acquired by an injection of antibodies that can be produced later. Now, an example of this would be getting the gamma globulin injection. Now I have a video for you guys to watch and hopefully enjoy.
Active and passive immunity. Objective: to learn the two forms of natural immunity, active and passive. The immune response produced when an antigen enters the body naturally without the aid of medical intervention is known as natural immunity. Natural immunity can be one of two types, either natural active or natural passive. When pathogens such as bacteria, viruses, or toxins enter the body and cause an infection, they will activate a natural response that is referred to as natural active immunity. Immune cells such as B cells and T cells will attack the antigen, eventually eliminating it. Natural passive immunity is the type passed in the form of antibodies from a mother to her fetus, across the placenta, or to her infant through her milk. Passive immunity will only be effective for a short period of time. Artificial immunity is an immune response that develops as a result of deliberate exposure to a specific antigen. The immunity acquired through vaccination as a reaction to a vaccine is known as artificial active immunity. Let's look at how a vaccine functions. When pathogens such as bacteria or a virus enter the body, white blood cells called lymphocytes or B cells recognize them as antigens and produce specific antibodies to fight them. This process is known as an immune response, and the antibodies will destroy the antigens. The antibodies will also remain in the body to fight future infections. A vaccine is designed to mimic the pathogen or antigen. When vaccinated, the immune system responds by producing antibodies for that particular antigen. This is a primary immune response. Along with antibodies, memory cells are also produced and are stored in bone marrow. If antigens invade again, memory cells will recognize them and quickly produce antibodies to combat them. This is a secondary immune response. Vaccines are antigens, but sometimes antibodies are administered directly to fight infections or prevent diseases such as malaria and rabies. The administration of antibodies is referred to as passive artificial immunity. And, like passive immunity, it only lasts for a short time. Summary. An immune response is produced when an antigen enters the body. Active immunity is a response to the antigens. Passive immunity occurs when antibodies are administered to an individual.
As you can see, there are actually 4 different ways, 4 different types of acquired immunity. Let's go back to this. Now I have some questions for you guys. The first one would be, when antigens enter the body, the process of the immune system's natural response to fighting off the antigens are called. The second question would be, which of the following would be the 2 types of natural immunity? A would be hemoglobin pathogens, B would be natural active, natural passive, C chlorophyll, oxygen, D carbohydrates or proteins. Now 3, which infectious agent wouldn't be able to enter the body to cause infections? A being bacteria, B being carbon, C being viruses, D being toxins. In natural immunity, the blank cells attack pathogens as a natural response to them entering the body. Number 5, in artificial immunity, the response will be developed when the patient is blank to a specific antigen. 6, which would be an example of artificial active immunity? A being antibiotics, B being surgery, C being vaccinations, D being medications. Seven, with vaccinations, the antigens will be inserted into the patient and the immune system will respond by producing antibodies that will specifically target the antigens. This will be an example of blank immune response. Number 8. Also, with vaccinations, when the antibodies are produced, memory cells will also be produced. Now, when the antigens enter the body, the memory cells will detect them, causing the memory cells to make antibodies to destroy the antigens. This would be an example of blank immune response. Number 9. With passive immunities, the antibodies are acquired blank. Which of the following would be an example of natural passive immunity? A being injections, B being breastfeeding, C being nutrition, D being physical fitness. 11. Passive immunity would be considered blank-termed immunity. Now I have the answers for those questions. Now with the first one, when antigens enter the body, the process of the immune system's natural response to fighting off the antigens are called natural immunity. The second one, which of the following will be the 2 types of natural immunity? That would be B, natural active and natural passive. Which infectious agent wouldn't be able to enter the body to cause infections? That would be carbon, because the rest of the 3 are infectious agents that would be able to enter the body. 4. In natural immunity, the B cells and T cells attack the pathogens as natural response to them entering the body. 5. In artificial immunity, the response will be developed when the patient is exposed to the specific antigen, which would be an example of artificial active immunity. That would be vaccinations, because as you can see, in the last videos. With vaccinations, the antigens will be inserted into the patient and the immune system will respond by producing antibodies that will specifically target the antigens. This will be an example of primary immune response. Number 8. Also, with vaccinations, when the antibodies are produced, memory cells will also be produced. Now, when the antigens enter the body, the memory cells will detect them, causing the memory cells to make antibodies to destroy the antigens. This will be an example of secondary immune response. Number 9, with passive immunity, the antibodies are acquired from another person because it has to come from another person. Number 10, which of the following would be an example of natural passive immunity? And that would be breastfeeding because it's coming from the mother to the child, and that's through pregnancy. Number 11, passive immunity will be considered short-term immunity. And here's the answers to the questions. Okay.